কৰিবলৈ মই বিচাৰিম।
Okay.
Otherwise, speaking 2 hours at a stretch, তেওঁলোকে মানে retentive power টো নাথাকিব।
আমাৰ ইয়াতে দিলীপ হাজৰিকা আছে, তেওঁ হোষ্ট কৰিব মানে সেশনটো।
Good morning, madam.
Morning.
And Dr. Bharat Bora.
Namaskar, Baidu.
Namaskar.
Meet কৰি দিওঁ। Dilip. You can start.
More voice to শুনিছে নে ঠিকে?
শুনি পাইছো।
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Respected dignitaries, research persons, and dear learned participants. I, Dilip Hazarika, on behalf of Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, Guwahati, welcome you all to this first session of the last day of our international workshop, Governance and Development, Issues and Challenges, held in collaboration with ICSSR and in support from 2 premier educational institutes of Assam, Maridhal College and Shinamara College. Dear participants, in this journey of togetherness in the last 6 days, we saw the issues and challenges of governance being discussed and analyzed from multiple perspectives like economic, social, political, by scholars of great eminence. However, discussion on good governance will be incomplete without analyzing the legal aspect and its importance on governance. For this purpose, today, we are inviting a renowned speaker, Ms. Pallavi Devi, to give a talk on rule of law, foundation of good governance under the frame of Indian Constitution. Madam, I welcome you to this virtual platform. Dear learned participants, I'd like to inform you that Ms. Pallavi Devi is currently serving as the assistant professor in the Department of Law in Guwahati University. She is an outstanding speaker and a great teacher and has lots of expertise in the field of law and published numerous articles in reputed journals. In this presentation, we hope to see the implication of various provisions of law in shaping good governance. At the end of the presentation, I believe our learned participants will be aware of those rules which can check and balance the governance. Wishing a great session, thought-provoking and eye-opener session, and also expecting active participation from our dear participants, I request Ms. Pallavi Devi to put forward her presentation. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Dr. Dilip Hazarika, for your introduction, brief introduction, I would say. Also, allow me to thank the organizing committee, Chairperson Dr. Dipen Saikia, Organizing Secretary Dr. Dipon Das, Coordinator Ms. Vandita Barbara, Joint Coordinator Dr. Jogesh Das, for having me in 1-week international workshop on governance and development, issues and challenges organized by your center, that is Center for Ethnic Studies and Research, in collaboration with ICSSR NERC Shillong. A very good morning to all of you. Before starting, may I know my audience, like their background, their discipline, if they are from teaching background?
Yes, most of the participants are from teaching background, and we have participants from almost all of the states of India and mainly from Northeast India. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone from the legal background? Anyone from legal discipline? Madam, is there anyone from the legal discipline as a participant?
Yes, our participants, if you are from any one of you are from legal background, please write in the chat box.
Is there anyone?
No, ma'am. But
Okay.
most of the participants are from political science and economics background.
Okay, okay. So no participants from legal background, but I have my audience maximum from political science and economics background. So of course, this is sufficient of like to get a diverse response. May I request the organizing committee to communicate or convey me immediately if the internet goes off, because normally it happened to me quite a number of times that I keep on speaking and on the other hand, like the internet is not there. So please leave me a text in my WhatsApp or do call me if I go off the internet.
Sure,
So
ma'am.
I
We'll
will.
let you know.
So because the bandwidth is very low, I will keep my video off. I will only be speaking. So here online mode of communication has taken the main charge in this pandemic, when there was no any mode of other communication to keep ourselves connected to each other. Only the digital mode of communication has helped us to connect each other. We all should acknowledge, or we also take into cognizance that the word webinar is not a new word in the dictionary, but this word webinar was frequently used only when the COVID-19 crisis swept away the globe and the human race with fear, anxiety, and uncertainties. So today, I'll share my screen. Is my PPT visible there?
Yes, ma'am. It's quite visible.
So today, the topic that I'm going to engage with you all is rule of law, foundation of good governance under the framework of Indian Constitution. So first of all, I will take you while navigating through the Constitution of India. I will stop myself to some important phrases of the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Before going to the preamble of the Indian Constitution, I would like to say, or I would like to convey that the simple framework that the Indian Constitution, we all know that it is a written one, where the Parliament is a creation of the Constitution. The Constitution has created the Parliament. The Parliament has not created the Constitution, unlike in England. And since the Parliament is a creation of the Constitution is considered as a superior law which is unchangeable by any ordinary means. I repeat, uh, since the Constitution has created the Parliament, the Constitution is superior. And if there are any attempt by ordinary means to change the Constitution through an act of legislature, then such act of legislature is considered as void. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are right.
Am I? So we have three organs of the government. These are the basic things while going to the Constitution of India. So it will help us to understand how the constitution is located. So the three organs are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Now, Article 50 of the Constitution of India specifically mentions about the independence of judiciary from the executive. There is no any other provision in the Constitution of India where we find any such language or where we find any other provision talking that the legislature has been separated from the judiciary. That means the only provision is Article 50, which specifically mentions about the independence of judiciary. Now the common perception is there is a connivance between the executive and the legislature, not between the legislature and the judiciary, but there is a connivance between the legislature and the executive of mending and bending the constitution according to their own whims and caprices. I also would like to repeat that there is a connivance between the legislature and the executive of mending and amending the constitution according to their own whims and caprices. It is only the constitutional obligation of the judiciary to keep a vigil or to be the watchdog on the constitution. So the primary duty of the judiciary as an organ of the government is to keep a vigil or to be the watchdog on the act of the executive. Even though Article 50 has said or declares that the executive shall be separated from the judiciary, that means separation of power. Even though it speaks, the Constitution, Article 50 speaks of the separation of power, then also there is no watertight separation, there is no watertight operation of powers, and therefore they are brought as equal and coordinate department. Equal and coordinate, not superior, neither inferior, but they are equal and coordinate department, respecting separation of powers or checks and balances. I repeat, these are coordinate and equal department. There is no hierarchy. No, the other branches of the government, even though judiciary is independent, they are not inferior, not superior, but they are brought as equal and coordinate department. Now, what does separation of power mean? Or what does checks and balances mean? It means that the legislature could not encroach upon the power of judiciary. Executive too cannot encroach the power of legislature or judiciary, and vice versa. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but your slide is stuck. I think in the second slide it is stuck.
No, I will just, knowingly I'm in second slide. I will definitely go down.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So coming to the preamble of the Indian Constitution, the preamble, the terminology is such that it starts with the word we. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, fraternity. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give ourselves this Constitution. Now we all know that the preamble is a preface to the Constitution. Any preamble to any law, is a preface to the Constitution, because the preamble clarifies in any act. The preamble clarifies who has made the act, for what purpose the act has been made. In this case, the preamble, in the case of the Constitution of India, the preamble clarifies who has made the Constitution, what is its source, or what is the ultimate sanction behind it. The ultimate sanction behind it is the people of India. What is the nature of that the polity sought to be established? What are its goals? What are its objectives? So these are the difficult questions that the preamble, if we look into the preamble attempts to answer these very complicated questions, because the goal of the entire Constitution of India, or the goal of entire law, is set out in the preamble, which is a preface or a key to understand. Now, from the preamble, we understand what is sovereign, that not allowing other. By sovereignty, we means that the free will. I will not focus on the word sovereign, but I will take your attention to the words socialist, democratic, republic. Now, what is the principal aim? Socialist and secular word. These two terminologies has been added to the Constitution by 42nd Amendment 1976. When the Constitution of India came into force, the preamble read only as sovereign democratic republic. These two terminologies were added by the 42nd Amendment 1976. Now, what does socialist mean? Am I audible, ma'am? I'm sorry, I'm
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, you are quite audible.
Madam, please put your presentation in slideshow mode, then it will be larger, I think.
But it will keep on moving, sir. Will it keep on moving?
Yes, ma'am.
Should I click the slideshow mode?
The
Madam,
below
did
right
you-
corner.
মই যদি slideshow যদি present কৰো, will it keep on moving?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, definitely.
So I will move according to like my what I want to present. I will go according to my wish. Will there be a problem? Is it visible to you all, the
Yes, ma'am.
participants?
There will be no problem.
Okay. So what is the principal aim of being a socialist country? Why? What was the need of adding by amendment? We all know that the principal aim of being a socialistic country is to reduce the gap, is to reduce poverty, reduce the gap between the rich and the poor, between the haves and the haves not. Now, for this, there must have land reforms, there must have agrarian reforms, free compulsory education, distribution of the state produce. The goal, the basic idea is to push forward the concept of social justice. Democratic means it is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. It emphasizes on the word we. And coming to the word republic, I will cite example. We all know what the republic means, where the state is not, where the head of the state is not a hereditary monarch but elected representative. It is known as republic, and they have a limited tenure, say 5 years. In India, the executive head is the president of India, who is elected by the representative of the people of India. Suppose a parliamentarian is elected for 5 years, amend the constitution and says that the life of that particular parliament and life of all members in that parliament would remain intact and continue for another 40-50 years. And no election would take place for another 40-50 years. Would the citizens of India tolerate this? Definitely no. Because these are the basic structures of the Constitution. These are the basic structures of the Constitution, and the citizens themselves are given to this Constitution. And republic means elected representative, not bringing hereditary or succession or the privilege that the people of India must, every citizen of India have the right, have their claim, or should have their claim in bringing out their representative who will represent their will, people's will, general will in the parliament. So, so these words, these terminologies. So these terminologies, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, they are considered as the basic structure of the Constitution. Even the fundamental rights of the Constitution can be amended, but the basic structure remains the same. And if Parliament cannot amend the and if Parliament tries to amend the basic structure of the Constitution, trying to abrogate or emasculate the basic features that suits the basic structure or destroy the basic structure, then the court, by virtue of Article 50, which speaks about separation of power, the court would have no option but to strike it down. Now, these are the basic structures. You see, supremacy of the Constitution. When there is the supremacy of Constitution, we find that there is rule of law and no rule of man. When there is Republican form of government, there is, which is a basic structure, rule of law will prevail. Democratic government, likewise independent judiciary, judicial review, separation of powers, limited government. Now, secularism is also a basic structure of the Constitution, because in India, pluralism is the keystone of Indian culture and religious tolerance, of Indian secularism. And regarding this independent judiciary or judicial review, they have initially independent judiciary and judicial review. These concepts were fundamental concepts of independent judiciary, but these concepts has been elevated to become the basic structure and are the very heart of the constitutional scheme. Now, what constitutes the basic structure in a constitution is not a close-ended one. When necessary, if the time and the context demands that this should be a basic structure of the Constitution, then it will additional again a word will be added to the basic structure of the Constitution. Like in the preamble, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, they were the basic structure of the Constitution. But here we see that limited government is also elevated to the concept of basic structure, because limited government means bringing the constitutionalism into existence. Only the presence of a constitution will not make the constitution an enduring one. The presence of the element constitutionalism also includes these factors, will make the constitution an enduring one. Otherwise, people will revolt and the constitutional mechanism will fall down. Now, coming to the concept of the rule of law. This concept of rule of law is an old one. Even we find this concept to be discussed in Greek philosophies by philosophers like Aristotle or Plato, Spinoza, Rousseau in the modern period, who talks of social contract theory. We find the concept of rule of law discussed even by those philosophers. This phrase, rule of law, is derived from the French principle, la principle de legalité, which implies a setup in which people are governed according to principles of law and not according to the whims or fancies of any individual group. Now, sir, in the right-hand side, Sir Edward Coke, who was the Chief Justice of King James I's reign, was the originator of this concept. Later, Professor A.V. Dicey, who was a British jurist and a constitutional theorist, developed this concept in his book, Law of the Constitution, in 1885. The basic tenet of this concept is, be you ever so high, the law is above you. Be you ever so high, the law is above you. That means from the humble peon to the CGI of India, all are considered equal in the eyes of law. No matter in whatever position you are, the law arms or the law will treat you equal. So we will move to the next slide, explaining the concept which Professor Dicey has laid down. What are the three maxims or what are the three premises on the basis of which Professor A.V. Dicey propounded the concept of rule of law? Now, the first principle A.V. Dicey propounded while taking the concept of rule of law was absence of arbitrary power. That means no man can be punished except for a breach of law. And if a man breaches a law, he shall be punished as per the procedure of law. That is, there is less room for discretion for the organs, because more the power, more the corruption. Less the power, less the corruption. This is the first premise, that is absence of arbitrary power. And this if a man breaches a law, he shall be punished as per procedure of law. The law will be equal for a humble man, for a layman, and the law will treat equally to the highest position. Of course, there will be a bracket, intelligible differentia. And the second premise is equality before the law, where all men are equal and no one is above the law. This is Article 14 in the Indian Constitution. And third premise is what Professor Dicey propounded was predominance of legal spirit, where in London, it was the Constitution was the result of juridical decision determining the rights of private persons, in particularly by the cases brought before the court. But this third principle is not applicable in Indian context, as in the Constitution everything has been laid down and the Constitution is only the paramount law. Now, in the Indian Constitution, let's see how, because there is no specific provision dealing with the rule of law. But it does not mean that the rule of law is not there, because we find the part 3, which deals with the fundamental rights, which are the basic, which are guaranteed rights, or which are entitlement for the citizens of India, and they are considered as a very sacrosanct or they are very fundamental. And these fundamental rights are against the state. The remedy is available against the state. These are enforceable also, and these are, of course, these are not absolute rights, but these are very sacrosanct and fundamental rights of a citizen. Now, some allied principles that we find in the Indian context are Article 20, which is absent here. Article 20 speaks that a person cannot be tried for same offense more than once. It prohibits double jeopardy, that a person cannot be tried for same offense more than once. Now, Article 14, we all know that any law which is found in violation of any provision of the Constitution, particularly the fundamental rights, is declared as void by Article 14, equality before law and equal protection of law. Now, right to life. Right to life in Article 21 of the Constitution does not speak merely of the physical act of breeding. It does not merely connote mere animal existence. It has a much wider meaning, which includes right to life with human dignity. Dignity is a very pregnant word. Dignity can be interpreted to include many more things to make the life more meaningful. Right to pollution free air. It is this article, that is Article 21, which in the Constitution has received the widest possible interpretation. The attempt was, and the attempt is, to give a broadest interpretation. It's not to attenuate or not to give a strict interpretation, but to give the broadest possible interpretation that is possible. Now, before 1978, that is, I would like to bring that case law, Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India, which was a case in the year 1978, just immediately after the emergency period. In that case, Supreme Court, because of its failure to protect the civil rights during the emergency period, gave a new dimension to Article 21 in this case, Maneka Gandhi, to include within its ambit the right to live with human dignity. That means not only including the bare necessities of life, but must include adequate nutrition, clothing, shelter overhead, freely moving, mingling with fellow human beings, and also the right to carry on functions and activities which constitutes the bare minimum expression of human self. And coming to Article 19. Article 19, we all know, it deals with the freedom of speech and expression in the Indian Constitution. The word press is absent here. The freedom of press is also implied in freedom of speech and expression. Now, what does freedom of speech and expression mean? That it means that without free political discussion, no public education, so essential for proper functioning of the process of the popular government is possible. So without free press, free discussion, free critique or criticism is not possible. A healthy discussion is not possible. That the opinion of only the ruling party is not important, but the opinion of the opposition is also equally important. One important landmark decision in Sakal papers, which was a very landmark decision, there was a regulation that a newspaper can publish this many pages with this much of size at this price. So was that kind of rule a violation of rule of law? So the Supreme Court held in that case, that is in Sakal Papers Limited versus Union of India, that any order which fixed the number of pages and size which a newspaper could publish at a price was held violative of freedom of press and does not amount to a reasonable restrictions laid down under clause 19, under article 19 clause 2. So definitely press plays a very significant role in a democratic machinery. And article 14, article 19, article 21, they are considered as a golden triangle of the Indian Constitution. Madam, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, we can
Madam,
hear
I
you.
am. Okay. So, in the criminal jurisprudence, the rule of law also demands that a person should be considered. The jurisprudence demands, in criminal jurisprudence, the rule of law demands that a person is considered innocent till his guilt is proved beyond reasonable doubt. If there is circumstantial evidence, then the circumstantial evidence must be so corroborated that it must be proved beyond reasonable doubt to establish the guilt of that person who is held guilty. If this chain, even if one element is missing to establish his guilt or her guilt beyond reasonable doubt, then the criminal jurisprudence following rule of law demands the person or sets its claim to set the person free. This is the rule of law of criminal jurisprudence. On the other hand, there are certain acts like Money Laundering Act, where the criminal jurisprudence is, where the jurisprudence is like the person is considered as a guilty unless proven innocent. So it's opposite. In money laundering case, in Money Laundering Act, a person is considered guilty unless proven innocent. On the other hand, in criminal jurisprudence, the rule of law demands that a person is considered innocent until proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So, let's rewind to the darkest period of the Indian democracy that the Indian democracy faced, because our democracy from 1975 has matured, that it can withstand critique. The Indian democracy has matured to the extent that everyone, even the layman, can put their view. Nowadays, we have so many social media. We can put our voice can be heard, and they can withstand the people's voice, which are of different hues. But let's rewind to the most darkest phase, that is the period from 1975 to 1977. Most people, they believe that Indira Gandhi, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi imposed emergency on June 25th or 26th in the year 1975 to save her own prime ministership. And because emergency was declared, there was manifold changes, like there was enlargement of the executive powers of the union. There was also enlargement of legislative powers of the parliament. There was extension of life of the House of the People. There was there was suspension of the fundamental rights. I will take you to the other slide. Article 14, 19, 21, 19. They are considered as a golden triangle. I told you earlier, but here this emergency suspended the most important article that the Constitution of India provides to the citizens of India. And because of those kinds of interpretation, the people of India have surrendered themselves or have given themselves this constitution. Those articles, Article 14, 19, 21 were suspended. There was complete press censorship during the emergency, and there was gross violation, human rights violation. Leaders were arrested, human rights activists were also arrested, put behind the bars. So the judiciary, who was independent from the day the constitution was enforced, which got a very golden opportunity to interpret whether the procedure, because Article 21 speaks of procedure established by law or due process of law. So judiciary in 1975 to 1977, they got a golden opportunity to interpret whether the procedure established by law is a state-made law, non-conforming to the principles of natural justice. But the judiciary, instead of attempting to question the executive, whether they're executing the laws beyond their power, beyond their purview, instead of interrogating, what judiciary did is they have upheld a suspension of the top leaders of the country, the students of the country, the student leaders of the country, the human rights lawyers, or anyone who have showed their courage to put their voice during the emergency period. So the fundamental question that the judiciary during this emergency was supposed to ask was whether life is a gift from the state, whether life is an inalienable thing, or whether life is a gift from the state. So judiciary miserably failed in its duty to protect the civil liberties of the common citizens. So we find in this emergency, we find many things like who was asked to bend. Media was only asked to bend, but instead of bending, they started crawling. Media, which was asked to bend, instead of bending, they started crawling, and they started assisting the government in power in headline management and damage control, serving as a propaganda vehicle. So media became a propaganda vehicle in the hands of the ruling party. Executive order bureaucracy, because the primary function of the legislature is to make laws. The primary function of executive is to execute the laws, and judiciary, of course, is to declare the laws. Now, these executive are the bureaucrats. These bureaucrats or the bureaucracy in that emergency period became so spineless that it forgot to serve the Indian Constitution and the Indian people. Rather, they are serving the politicians who are in power. So the bureaucracy or the bureaucrats or the executive forgot the principle or the philosophy that they have to serve the people of India. And democracy is in a democracy, dissenting opinion are always valued, because dissenting opinion develops democracy because you have a number of other opinions. But at that point of time in 1975 to 1977, dissenting opinion was criminalized, where criticism is of course different from critique, where criticism or a healthy opinion also was given or slammed sedition surges. And sedition surges is a big surge. That means you are a traitor. Having a dissenting opinion cannot, of course, draw a sedition surge, where peaceful protesters got jailed under some draconian laws. A person who holds a placard to give his voice, peaceful assembly, where they gathered in a peaceful assembly just to give their voice, holding placards. Those kind of peaceful protesters also are put behind the bars, that too under the draconian laws, where our fundamental rights under Part 3, who were sacrosanct because they are an entitlement, they are guaranteed rights to the citizen of India, they lost the sacrosanct nature. They are neither safe, they are neither fundamental. So that was the horrors of emergency in the year 1975. Since then, our democracy has matured, our judiciary has matured, because after 1977, immediately in 1978, in Maneka Gandhi case, the fundamental rights were given the broadest possible interpretation to include human life with a dignity. And I mentioned that this word dignity is a word which has so much of meaning, which has so much of depth into it. So from 1975, let's come to the present situation. This is just a brainstorming to make you understand the concept of rule of law. I am attempting in this way because my target audience are all from academic background and they have all sorts of existing knowledge. So I'm trying to give only a very brief idea how the rule of law from it was there, the concept of rule of law exists in the Greek philosophers' time, and how it has traveled to the present time. I'm only attempting to engage my audience with a brief idea. I do not want to go into the legalities, into the technicalities of law. What is rule of law, in which provision you will find rule of law, or how CRPC deals rule of law, or how CPC deals with. No, I'm not doing all those things, but I'm just attempting to like bring a very brief idea how rule of law has traveled, the ups and downs of rule of law and the Indian democracy. So in this slide, I put on 3 people. C is Sudha Bharadwaj, who is an Indian trade unionist. She is from Chhattisgarh, who is a communist, who is a civil rights activist against land acquisition, who has worked and lived in Chhattisgarh for 29 years. Now, she is currently incarcerated in Indian prison on false and fabricated charges. Because police she's still in prison, she's still behind the bars, and police has found no evidence against her. She is Sudha Bharadwaj. So there is a clamor to free Sudha Bharadwaj from the jail, from behind the bars. The next person is, the clamor is release Comrade Gautam Navlakha, who is also a human rights activist and a proponent of democratic rights, and is a critique of the army and the state atrocities from Kashmir to Chhattisgarh to India's northeast. He is also currently incarcerated in Indian prison on various fabricated charges. So how can, if there is rule of law, if the criminal jurisprudence even demands, or where the criminal philosophy is to consider a person innocence until he is proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. If that is so, how can they be put behind the bars even when their charges are proved false? So this is for you to understand the depth of having a good opposition of the present, not the present, of any ruling government, and the role of opposition. The opposition must also be very strong. So in this tweet done on July 9th, where a very credible editor of a news channel tweeted that a retired IPS officer told him that it is unlikely because Dubey will be caught, he and associates will be mostly encountered. They know too many secrets about too many big people. And exactly on July 10th, because Dubey was encountered. So on 9th July, a very credible editor, chief editor, tweeted that because Dubey is most likely to be encountered because they know too many secrets about too many big people, and exactly on July 10th, because Dubey is encountered. Now, whether my audience, my friends, don't you think that there are ups and downs in the rule of law? Of course, there is. I want to carry this example ahead with some more contemporary issues. In this picture, in the extreme right-hand side, on 25th May 2020, George Floyd, who was an African-American 46-year-old man who was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, while being in police custody. This was in 25th May 2020. Now, George Floyd was handcuffed and was lying with his upside down. His chest was on his ground, and he was constantly begging for his life, repeatedly with folded hands. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Now he lost his life while in the custody of the police. Now Floyd's death triggered a huge protest in the social media as hashtag Black Lives Matters. After the protest, hashtag Black Lives Matters, there were subsequent other protests. There were subsequent other protests like hashtag Dalit Life Matters, hashtag Tribal Life Matters, hashtag Muslim Life Matters. But coming back, and in this case, all life matters, hashtag all life matters came as a counter response to the hashtag movement Black Lives Matters. Now, saying all life matters as a response to the death of George Floyd on March 25th, 2020, with a counter opinion, hashtag all life matters, it amounted to saying like, the fire department should spray down all houses in the neighborhood, even though only one house is on fire, because all houses matter. So can you take this? When only one house is on fire, with this counter opinion, all houses matters, does it mean that when the only one house is on fire, the fire spray should be done to all houses, whereas only in that point of time only one house in the neighborhood was in fire? Definitely. all lives matters, or in this example all houses matters, but right now only your house is not on fire, only my house is on fire. So that is to say that when rule of law prevails, the law act in a context specific and not people specific. This was the attitude of the whites against the black. This attitude matters because attitude travels. Attitude travels. Attitude takes into consideration the caste, class, race, political affiliation, and then only the truth can be arrived. In that case or in that situation, truth becomes subjective. Let me bring you a maxim here that a truth cannot be altered by 100 texts. A truth cannot be altered by 100 texts. But if truth becomes subjective, if truth comes only after knowing your caste, only after knowing your class or political affiliation, then the truth is no truth. Then the truth becomes subjective, and of course, the rule of law becomes rule of man. So this is also a pictorial representation of how the voice is not heard. So coming to my next slide. The essential of good governance. So governance, now we want more governance and less of government. When there is more government, there is more discretion. When there is more governance, there is less room for discretion. And these are the factors, these are the elements of good governance. Participation, rule of law, transparency, responsiveness, equity and inclusiveness, effectiveness, accountability. Now, participation, we all know that when we participate, we get to know the actual picture. Without participation, without people's voice, if only the leader speaks, if only the government speaks, then the people will not be represented. Representation will be a farce. So participation is definitely a very essential element of good governance. Transparency and accountability, they go hand in hand. Where you are accountable to your chair, it becomes automatically transparent. And when you are transparent, there is accountability. They are both sides of the same coin. And if you are not responsive, how can you, to the claim of the people, the claim of the layman people, how can there be good governance? Let me take you to this slide, to this pictorial representation, because people often do mistakes in understanding the concept of equality and equity. Equality means, we all know Article 14 deals with equality. Apparently, Article 14 deals with equality. But Article 14 definitely deals with substantive equality. And this equity talks about substantial equality, and only equality talks about mere formal equality. Now, in this picture, there are three peoples of different age and different size enjoying a match. Now, this means equality, providing the same sorts of facilities. This picture on the left-hand side, it means equity. Your goal is to make the person a receiver. What is the use of equality when one person is left behind to enjoy the game? He is unable to participate. He is unable to respond. He is not included. There will be no effectiveness. There will be no transparency. But in this picture where there is equity, he has been given an additional support or scaffolding so that he too, irrespective of his size, age, he too can enjoy the sport. That is a goal. So we should not talk merely on equality. When we talk on equality, we must take enough care, sufficient care to see whether equity is prevailing or not. Then only substantial equality will be there. So, for good governance, we have in our Constitution the directive principles of state policy in part 4, and also a set of fundamental duties enlisted in Article 15(1)(a). Madam, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
So, since my target audience are maximum are from political science background, so they will be in a much better position to understand this fundamental duties, the importance of fundamental duties and directive principles of state policy. So when the directive principles of state policies, it starts in Article 36 and ended with Article 51. From Article 36 to 51, there are a sets of directives to the state. Now, where the definition of state or the instrumentalities of state is provided in Article 36, where the definition is same like that of Article 12. Now, I will not go detail into the definition of what constitutes a state, but I tell you that the state apparatus are the police, the hospital, the judiciary, they all comes under the definition of the state. Now, the directive principles of state policy are the difference between the DPSP, shortly, and the fundamental rights is that the DPSP, directive principles of state policy, they are not enforceable in a court of law, whereas fundamental rights are enforceable in a court of law against the state. Even though the directive principles of state policy are non-justiciable or non-enforceable, but they are very much fundamental in the governance of the country. And it shall be the duty of the state to apply these entire principles, to apply these entire principles while making laws as per Article 37. How these principles will, how these directive principles will be applied so that the state would secure a social order for the promotion of the welfare of the people. Now, the set of directive principles of state policy, they distinguish India as a welfare state, and the goal of India is is to establish India as a welfare state. And this DPSP definitely distinguish India as a welfare state. And it tries to fulfill the principles laid down in these directives, laid down in the directives. I'll take you a glance, just a glimpse of certain articles, like Article 39A, it speaks of equal justice and free legal aid. Article 40 talks of village panchayats. This Article 41 is important. This element, participation, we find here: right to work, to educate, and to public assistance in certain areas. This word, right to work, it means participation. So Article 42, it speaks of human conditions of work and maternity relief. So Article 43 talks of living wage, not minimum wage. Now, how do you know what is a living wage? In a research, initially, workers who were doing hard work or who were doing physical laborious work, they were allowed rupees 3. I'm talking in the I'm talking not of the present situation, but I'm talking under a law. I just forgot the law. Who were talking the minimum wage to be rupees 3. Now they were given food calorie of 1800. Now, who has determined that a person who is working, who is a daily laborer or who is working physically hard, that needs only 1800 calorie? Why was the WHO guidelines not followed while determining the wage of a daily laborer? Because the WHO mandates that a person who is indulging in hard work, on physical labor, on daily or earns bread by working daily, they need a calorie of 3600. By that research, the the living wage increased from rupees 3 to rupees 12. I forgot the act under which, I'm not talking of the minimum wage labor, but I will definitely let you know which if it comes to my mind. So the provisions of just and human condition. If you are not given the adequate nutrition, how will there be a human condition of work? And of course, we know there are maternity relief in books, but we find many women getting living their life or dying after just giving the birth to the children. Or you also see postpartum depression, where women, because of the imbalances in the body, they are not able to develop a bonding with the newborn child. Even there are many cases. Right to work and Article 43A are go together, because right to work also speaks of participation of workers in the management of industries. So promotion of cooperative society. Then Article 45, provision for early childhood care. This has been amended. Article 45 has been amended. Then promotion of educational and economic interests of SC and ST and other weaker sections. So this is another directives. We find specific mention of the word nutrition and the standard of living and improve public health. In the COVID-19 time, we saw situations how the public health was, went into the public health of the migrant workers. We saw how they died of hunger, how they died in starvation, how the children slept with empty stomach. So this was the directives. And COVID-19, this pandemic, uh, mm, though it's a pandemic, but and has made the migrant workers to suffer. But the flip side of this pandemic was that it exposed the central government and the state government, along with the employers, that they have let their workers to lead their life with impunity. They violated all the international instruments. They violated this mandate of public health, where there is good governance. So that was the pros and that was the exposure. COVID-19 has exposed the flip side of the governments. So directive principles of state policy, along with the 10 fundamental duties enlisted in Article 51A, also speaks of good governance. And let me convey you that though these directive principles are not enforceable in a court of law, yet uh, they are made responsible because they are made answerable before the election, before the electorate, as to why they have not taken these directives into consideration while making the law. So the directive principles are also equally important, just like the fundamental rights. And initially, the fundamental rights, when the Constitution came into existence, the fundamental rights were enforceable. But as time grew, and directive principles of state policy, they are non-enforceable because they were made non-enforceable only for the reason because there were less of resources. But with time, as the time passes, these fundamental rights have also accommodated directive principles of state policy. And there are case laws where they are precedent, where sometime uh, the directive principles of state policy have also superseded the fundamental rights. Uh, I would like to, okay, let me go down. India is said to have achieved socio-economic political justice. But let me tell you the truth, that definitely India have achieved political justice in toto, because one man can cast only one vote. There is economic justice much more than what we have earlier. Uh, because we have seen that there is less, I don't say that the gap have diminished or there is no gap, but there is an attempt to reduce the gap. There are so many policies nowadays coming up to uh, to reduce the gap or to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. So also there is an attempt to bring economic justice, but in the social front, there is no one man does not have the same value like one vote. So definitely India is still far in terms of achieving social justice. It was a goal. We have traveled far in achieving social justice, but we are still at distance, at a large distance in getting our, because people, the mindset of the people has been torn. The individualism has individualistic attempt has grown. The community feeling has lessened down. So these are the very critique which I can like help you to, like, to give you a thought. So coming to my next slide. One minute. if we go to Article 1 of the Constitution, we all know that India is a union of states. India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states, where the states cannot skid away from the union. Unlike the American Constitution or the American states, in case of India, the states cannot skid away from the union. So, federal structure of the Constitution is a basic structure of the Constitution. It has been elevated to a basic structure of the Constitution. Now, what is federalism? The idea of a federal structure is to have two sets of government, so that one government or one group may or should not dominate the entire power. So when there is federalism, the power is divided, and divided power means limited power, so that the center cannot exercise or enjoy all the powers, so that because the country is large, the problems are diverse, only a state are in a better position to handle their own citizens. Sitting in Delhi, the union government cannot understand the complexities of the Northeast. For example, now we know, sitting in Assam, that that the people of Arunachal will not give an inch of their land to the people of Assam, and the Assamese people will not even ask for it, even though because the people of Assam knows the complexities of the Northeastern identity. So sitting there in at the center, how can the union government deal with the problem that has emanated at this part of the country? So the federalism, where there is federalism, there is more opportunity to participate. Federalism decentralizes our politics. State government handle different problems. They have more points of access in government. They have more opportunities when the state are given, because of the federal structure, the state can demand more policies. What kind of policies should be there? And federalism, last not the least, federalism also enhances the judicial power. Judiciary, remember, judiciary is the watchdog of our constitution. So federalism is a very basic structure, and important is that divided power is limited power, and it brings governance. Now look at this image down. This is only a pictorial representation and is limited to explain only this concept, only to explain the complexities. Now, when the nationwide lockdown was declared, the central government, this is a meme, the central government, without consulting the states, have declared the lockdown, nationwide lockdown. Similar is followed in lockdown 2. Lockdown 3 also, the center have taken initiative to continuing without involving the states. Now in lockdown 4.0, look at this meme. Time for states to handle it. Time for states to handle it. See, union government is unable to handle to bring solution to the lockdown, which was declared without consulting the states. This shows time for states to handle it. This shows the importance of the states while taking the decisions. This is the importance of federalism, and federalism therefore is a basic structure of the Constitution. These are in this slide. These are certain avenues for a fair. The important word in this slide is fair. Avenue to a fair legal framework. Right to information, public interest litigation, having different environmental legislation. So these are the tools. These are the tools. Social action litigation. These are the tools at the hands of the netizens to derive information, right to know, to derive information how the decision has been taken on them, because they are our elected representative. They are answerable. They are accountable to our resources. We are taxpayer citizens. So these are the avenues to a fair legal framework. Environmental impact assessment. So a public a citizen or a netizen is in a better position to derive certain informations from the government as to how, why, for whom they have taken this kind of decisions. So this is what I have to this is all I have to speak, madam.
Thank you, madam, for your informative and analytical presentation. Thank you once more. I think madam's presentation has evoked questions almost everybody's mind. And I request all the participants, if you have any query or questions, to write in the chat box so that I can communicate it to madam. Madam, I have already one question in the chat box. May I ask?
Just 1 minute. When I stop the screen share, I'm unable to view the organizing committee. Can I come to the video?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
What video to baru?
I already have stopped your screen.
Okay, but I want to. Okay. Yes. Can I know the question?
Okay. I'm reading out the questions. The first question is asked by Bandita Barbara, coordinator of this program. And she writes, Madam, you have explained very well about the theory and implications of rule of law in India with many relevant examples. You have also mentioned about Vikas Dubey case. In the past years, we have seen different kind of scams like 2G spectrum scam, others housing scam, Commonwealth scam, Bofors scam, Sarada scam, etc. And most of the time, it seems that big fishes are escaping from the net and questions arises on judiciary and implementation of rule of law in true sense. Madam, what is your opinion in this regard?
Okay.
That is the question.
So,
Madam, could you listen? Did you listen to the question?
Yes. I will not try to go into the different scams that you have sent here, like these scams or others, housing scam, Commonwealth scam. But what I try what I will try to say is that, of course, I will try to attempt philosophically. Like when I was a student of jurisprudence, I read Plato, where Plato was mentioning that big fishes eat small fish naturally. So you have also used this word, big fishes escaping from the net. So there is a tendency. So our attempt as a layman or me from a legal background, corruption have always existed. So corruption, it's but when you are doing corruption by trespassing all the constitutional rights of the citizens, when you are trying to make profit by depriving a genuine citizen, by stripping out the fruits from the common citizen, then corruption is like, it becomes problematic, or corruption then comes into another level. But these are the cases to this spectrum, because the person Raja, he committed suicide. He have not escaped. One cannot go to a level where he is completely or absolutely blind to his conscience. And we see that into this spectrum case, the person, because it's a case, the scam is in 2002, I forgot the name right now, he committed suicide. And Bofors scam, if I remember correctly, then the Bofors scam has made the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi in a very difficult situation. And he, in many public platforms, found it, have expressed it, that Bofors scam was very problematic from the very beginning. But then let us understand that there are pressures, there are tensions, and there are corruption surges. And then corruption surges in the politics. It become a kind of everydayness. Even Rajiv Gandhi was very tired of this allegation of corruption when he was trying to bring a shift in the politics, when he was trying to add new elements in politics. Then he was really tired of the everydayness of the allegations. So Stardust came, we have seen how ink was thrown to the main accused in a public platform. So nobody have actually escaped the netizens' anger. They are made responsible, and they have faced the force of the public. So this is my opinion, that one person cannot escape by not becoming accountable to the public, or to the public money, or to the taxpayers. So I hope I have attempted. So, Madam Bondita, have I attempted?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Any question? I can see a different question. Okay. Ma'am, can you please elaborate on Article 20, Clause 3, right against self-incrimination? Can you compare with the right to remain silent that exists in America? Yes, I don't know the position in America, because I am not an expert in that, in criminal law. My background is constitutional and administrative law, but then I can say that Article 20, Clause 3, a person who is guilty, he cannot be made to confess before a police. He cannot be asked to accept or he cannot be forced to accept that, yes, I have committed the crime, arrest me. Rather, the investigation officer have to establish on his own that this person has committed the crime by a chain of events, and that events must be beyond reasonable doubt. You cannot give some leading questions, and one safeguard is that a confession made before a police is not admissible, is not a admissible evidence, but the safeguard is that the confession has to be made by the accused before a magistrate under section 164 CRPC. That is the safeguard, because police can use third degree to extort what he wants to hear, or extort the narration that suits him. That's why there is a safeguard that a person who has spoken before the magistrate, only that evidence is admissible as a evidence. So that is what I have to say with that. Yes, you can exercise the right to remain silent to some extent. You can exercise. I don't know the exact position what exists in America, but you can exercise the right to remain silent in Indian context. I see no other questions. Hope you have liked my presentation.
Thank you, madam.
Hope you have liked my audience have liked my presentation.
Yes, madam, your presentation is informative. Madam, referring to your title of the presentation, Foundation of Good Governance, I have some thoughts in my mind. For example, when a government comes which means overwhelmingly majority, means
Thumping majority.
out of support, yes, overwhelming majority, then do you think that the rule of the law can be foundation of good governance at that time? Because in that context, they can change the almost the basic structure of the constitution. Don't you think that in such cases, the inculcation of the spirit of democratic value will be the foundation of good governance?
That's a very important question at this present scenario. I'll answer only in one case, whether our democracy only speaks of majority, whether our democracy is only a only a principle of having the maximum numbers or the majority rule, whether the truth can be maligned by having a majority numbers. You are attempting to raising that question, because by having the majority opinion or having a thumping majority, not the majority opinion, having a thumping majority like this government have enjoyed, and even Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi also got a very thumping majority out of the sentiments because his mother just died, and the present situation is such that, for example, the Citizenship Amendment Act, government came into existence, came into power with a thumping majority. But does thumping majority means that the minority will have no voice? Does it mean that truth will find no space? Does it mean that rule of law will be given a definite meaning? It is for us to decide. We have given ourselves this constitution. Why can't we have a critique in our mind? Who is managing this? Is our Indian democracy so fragile? So these are the basic questions which we can raise in our mind. It's we have given ourselves to the constitution. So definitely, I feel this is a very political. If this question is very important, but I feel definitely not. Indian citizens, Indian democracy have stood a long way and they have become mature in understanding if someone is attempting or trying to subvert our constitution.
Okay, thank you, madam, for the answers and also for this presentation. I hope all our participants are immensely benefited by your informative, argumentative, and analytical presentations. And in the days to come, they will use the knowledge they have experienced here in this presentation. Thank you, madam, once again. Hope to meet you and again engage in intellectually in future. Thank you, madam. Dear participants, with this we end the first session, and the next session will start 3:30 p.m. sharp. And more announcement, we have actually another speaker today, but due to some unavoidable reason, he would not be here with us for this next session. That is why we'll meet again 3:30 sharp for this valedictory session. Till then, thank you.